And we are live. Welcome back to another episode of Derailed, courtesy of Arcaicskidz. I'm, of course, your host, Arcaicskidz, and we have Angela McArdle. How are you, Angela?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. We've got AngelaMcArdle.com scrolling there across the bottom. It's in the description. Definitely, you guys go check that out. Help her out. You can ask her questions. There's contact stuff there for her. So definitely do that. All right. Well, so you're running for LP national chair, and we're gonna get into that. But before we do that, we're gonna talk about Olden Chief's 100 days that he decided to go talk to Congress last night and tell them all the crazy ass shit he wants to pull off. So let's talk about that. Were you able to watch it, or have you caught any of the fun things that he had to say?
I am only superficially caught up, so I'm interested to hear more about it.
Okay, well, it's pretty much the normal stuff you would expect for him to say. You don't need AR-15 with 100 rounds because the deer aren't wearing Kevlar vests, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But at one point, this is my favorite part, he said that, we the people, and then he pointed out at the congressional members and he said, we, the government, we are the people.
Right.
And I'm like, oh shit. I mean, at least they're just saying it, outright. What do you think as far as what he has done in the last 100 days?
Well, what has he done? So he's threatened more gun control. He's said that the federal government won't roll out a vaccine passport system that's centralized because he believes that people won't have enough faith in it if it's from the federal government, so he wants the private sector to do it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
He's just said, like a bunch of insane Green New Deal pandering stuff about electricity and climate change.
Yeah, he tends to leave out a very, and I have this issue a lot. I'm very, very pro-nuclear. I understand nuclear very well. I've had 3 different conversations that have come up to about 6 hours in total with Mark Schneider, who's a nuclear operator in Virginia, who understands the technology very, very well. And I have a big problem when people say we need to worry about the climate and completely ignore the fastest, easiest way for us to switch from coal and natural gas in a clean, green way. I mean, you have any thoughts on nuclear? What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, well, I don't work in nuclear, but based on what I know from a layman's perspective, nuclear energy has improved as far as its safety and efficiency considerably in the last, 40 years. And it's whether we like it or not, it's a much greener alternative than coal-dependent electrical grid that pumps electricity into NiCad batteries that have to still be dumped into the earth. I don't quite understand the difference when you look at, the end result, which is we're going to have to store something toxic. And then I believe that now I can't recall what it's called off the top of my head, but the newer form of nuclear, that some of the energy is reusable. So yes. Yeah, that's what I thought.
The fuel rods that when they go to refuel from a lot of these plants now, they can mix thorium in and get extra burn time, which there's one, I believe, in Russia that's now proved that it's a very viable option. When they mix uranium with thorium, they get plutonium, so they can burn that longer. And then there's a company called Aurora that builds small reactors, and they can take the spent fuel rods from the large reactors and finish the process, getting them down to where the rods are gravel. There's no radiation at all. So as far as anything being bad for the environment, they've got it figured out. So, I mean,
is that what we call renewable? Does that count as renewable?
I would say we could count it as recycling.
All right.
But my understanding from the nuclear operator is under that model of using the spent fuel rods in using the remaining energy in those fuel rods in the Aurora program, that if we never mined another ounce of uranium, we have 3,000 to 10,000 years of energy just in the stuff that we already have stored. So I guess it's not renewable, but they can't just make a solar panel with magic. They have to mine, and there's a bunch of stuff, a bunch of different things that go into it, including batteries. The batteries are the number one thing, and so I find that very interesting, and I wanted to get your take on if you're going to run for LP chair. I've known who you are for quite a while. I've kind of followed what you've been doing. I wasn't really, I haven't really cared about the national side of things for a while because their messaging is just awful. But then when the lockdowns happened, you were very boisterous, very, very boisterous about that. Is that when you decided to run for LP chair?
Yes, that's what spawned it. I had talked about doing it in the past, and I had said, I could see that being something in my future. Once I have more experience chairing a large party under my belt, once I've just been in the movement longer, and this really, I found that I think it's really important that we learn a lesson from this, and that we take a very sharp direction, a change of course in leadership.
I agree with that 100%. That's one of the reasons that's when I really perked up and started paying more attention, is that a lot of the Libertarian National, especially when the lockdowns first started, when it was 15 days to slow the spread, I was like, okay, guys, here's your time, right? This is your time don't miss the opportunity that the Republicans and Democrats just gifted you with in this situation. And not only did they miss the opportunity, they agreed with them.
So mortifying. It's so mortifying. It's like a lot of the people who run the social media for LP National also agree with the BLM hashtag silence is violence. So, okay, that's cringy, but setting that aside, what that shows, when you believe that when you're silent in something, you are complicit in that narrative. Okay.
Right.
So that is the same thing with the lockdowns. If you apply that line of thinking to their action on lockdowns, they have nothing to say about it because they agree with it.
Right.
And I think that is the reality. I know that one of the people on the social media committee was quoted as saying that she didn't want to speak out against the lockdowns because she didn't want to sound like a stupid COVID denier.
That's you.
These are people that are picked by the chair or by the current LNC. So this is not a popularity contest. This is not like I've got a great experience and resume doing libertarian messaging. This is just this is a product.
I would hope that with a change in leadership up there, that there would be a change in social media to people that will message more abruptly. Let's put it that way. I basically said to hell with the Libertarian Party when the lockdown started. I felt like I was one of the only people just screaming like at the top of my lungs, like, this is a mistake, this is a mistake. We've got to, I saw it as a perfect opportunity, like I said, for the LP to go, wait, now look what these people are doing to you. You know what I mean? Come over here, help us, and we'll help you. We'll show you the way, so to speak. But like you said, they just didn't say anything. They were very quiet. You were very boisterous. I will say that Karen Ann Harlow, very boisterous.
Yes. So
I've had her on the show. I like her quite a bit. I don't agree with her on everything, but that's fine. We don't need to. So I I've talked to Reed a few times and like David Fight and a couple of those guys, and I wasn't entirely sure who I would support. I knew you were going to be running, and I like a lot about you until the COVID passport thing happened. And then LP National did the same nonsense as they did with the lockdowns. And you secured my support in that one because you were like, no, this is awful. So why don't you talk about that? Because you got some pushback I saw on that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So for some reason, people want to, so instead of leading with libertarianism, they want to have this knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, but if a private market vaccine passport pops up, if it's free market, if it's private enterprise, then it's okay, so we should support it. What on earth? Okay, let's just unpack that complete disaster. Why would you lead with that in libertarian messaging? Mm-hmm. Why do you feel the desire to show contempt for the individual? And why are you so delusional that you think this is something that is born of the free market? This entire lockdown, this entire narrative about coronavirus, everything about it that's being pushed is a government agenda. All of the statistics and fear mongering are pushed by government departments. They're government scientists on government payrolls. Everything that has been free market and private enterprise, anything that questions the narrative has been shot down and called conspiracy nonsense. It's absolutely not free market, any of the agenda that's being pushed. So there's that, right? And then there's the fact that the Biden administration openly said, we don't believe that people have enough faith in the federal government to trust a vaccine passport issued by us. So we're asking private enterprise to roll it out. Okay, so then there's a federal government statement on it. Then if you go and you look at things like Verifly, which is the American Airlines vaccine passport that they are using right now for international flights, and it's been their stated intention that they'll use it for domestic flights as well, probably by the time the summer gets in. But if you look at Verifly, you will see that the vice president of Dayon, which is the company that Verifly is their product, he's a former operative at Customs and Border Protection. He's worked for the Department of Homeland Security. He has worked on their bioterrorism units. He has worked on data tracking. Anything that freaks you out that's Orwellian, dystopian, government nightmare, intrusion, that's what he's pioneered. And so have other people at that company too. They're basically the private sector front for the government's border control. Right. That's not private sector. So I don't have a lot of respect for libertarians in positions of leadership who come out and say, well, sure, we oppose government vaccine passports, but if the private, if the free market wants to do it, that's okay. So, that kind of messaging coming from national and any version of that is just anathema to liberty. It's like these people are embarrassed to be libertarians.
Yeah, I've been catching a lot of hell lately because, I've run up into that wall a lot of, well, the free market. And I'm like, I don't know how to explain this to you. We don't have a free market. That is not real in America, and it hasn't been real for a very long time. But you can see these people, they jump back and forth from Raytheon to Homeland Security or Department of Defense. You see, you've got YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, every one of them saying, if you say anything about, the Rona that's not, it's outside of what the CDC or WHO or all God Dr. Fauci says, they're going to get rid of you. That's not a private company. That's not, these outfits are not private. I'm sure you know who Dan Berman is, who likes to go and get insulin and then sell it at cost to people, where he can go get it, bring it back, and it's $12, And people say, well, insulin shouldn't be so expensive, but what are you going to do? I'm like, well, take away their government protection. Because that's how they pull that shit off in America, and it drives me insane. Because of that messaging of, well, it's a free market. No, it's not. It's not a free market.
Right.
And very much want to see someone at the top of LP National that says that. You know what I mean? Says that this is not right. This is not what's happening. These people just run this circle jerk protecting each other. And it makes me crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What's your overall platform? What's your number one thing you want to push if you manage to become the LP chair?
The number one thing I want to push is better messaging from the National Party. And here's why. So if you're brand new to libertarianism and you live, who cares where? Iowa, Los Angeles, Delaware, and you Google Libertarian Party. The first thing that pops up is the National Libertarian Party. It's their website and it's their social media. And that's where you go to see whether or not you like what an organization has to say, what you see what it stands for, you know, you find out about it. You see its face. And when you look that up, if you're pissed off about lockdowns and you're like, oh, well, that doesn't sound libertarian. A libertarian, you know, liberty, freedom. Okay, this is the opposite of freedom. I'll look it up. And you see nothing on it. You just go, oh, well, that's weird, or what a joke, or I don't understand. And then you just discard it and keep going. Or maybe you openly ridicule it and hate it and, you know, think it's awful. So bad messaging blocks us from getting new members, blocks us from getting new voters. It blocks us from getting new donors. Like, it basically just blocks us from everything.
Right.
So I think that's at the top. Other things on my platform are that I would really like to grow membership.
Yeah.
I think that is really important. Growing membership helps us to grow donors, and it helps us to grow. It's a very low-hanging fruit piece of our fundraising. It helps us obviously get registered voters if people aren't already registered. It just grows the organization, and it also helps to hold leadership accountable too, the more members we get. We need to increase our donor base. Right now, we sort of recycle through the same top 5 donors and exhaust them and bleed them dry. If we have better messaging and we have a larger membership, we're going to have better donors. And, you know, that's really good. People don't want to donate to a cause they don't believe in, right? So we need to sell people on a vision of liberty. We do that with good messaging and, well, you know, also maybe strategic plans, market research, some of these basic things that other similar organizations have that we don't have. We need to get that in too.
Right.
So that's some of my platform.
As far as, I'm sorry, go ahead.
A pet peeve, something that I definitely want to get rid of, is the newsletter. I think that is really important. Have you received a newsletter? No,
I haven't. But I took myself off all the mailing lists, so I didn't even know we had one anymore.
It's a newsprint newsletter. It costs over $20,000 a year.
Did they not know what email is?
I get those occasionally, but it's newsprint. It only goes to registered dues-paying members. Really getting the word out there.
Well, it doesn't go to all of us.
Right.
So.
It's a very expensive pat on the back.
Oh, well, I don't need that. You could save the $20,000 and spend it on something useful. You know, and you can send out you don't need to send out a newsletter when Twitter and, you know, Facebook and email is free. That's ridiculous.
When you're on a really tight budget, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. I know that libertarians have had a rough time raising capital. I agree with you. I think if their messaging was a lot better, that would naturally adjust itself. I think there was a huge opportunity to raise a maximum amount of money if we would have been screaming, you know, to the rooftops about the lockdowns from the day they mentioned, oh, we're going to have these lockdowns.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because I remember seeing Cheeto Dictator on TV talking about, you know, doing it. And I was like, God, this is a terrible idea. It's not going to be 15 days. It's going to get worse, you know, and now it's stay away from each other, wear 15 helmets or whatever shit they come up with any given day. And it's ridiculous to me. And now they're, oh, well, we are not going to have a COVID passport, but you're all going to require one.
Yeah.
So that drives me insane. As far as your platform goes, as the chair, I don't know exactly how it works, but I would assume you have a big hand in how funds get allocated as far as to candidates or anything. Is that something that you would be responsible for?
Well, to an extent,
Okay.
that's something that the chair, the chair helps to populate committees that sort of decide these sort of budgets and things of that nature. So I would have a larger influence on it than anyone else on the LNC. I think that's the most reasonable way to put that.
Okay. One of the things that I've noticed a lot is the party, and they've always been like this. I mean, I've been a member since 2004, and they've always been like this. They seem to focus very heavily on the presidential race. And I understand they need to keep ballot access and stuff, so they need to make sure that they're involved in that. But they don't seem to pay any attention to lower races. And I'm not even talking Congress and senators. I'm talking like state representatives, county commissioners, school boards, things that cost very little money to get someone elected. You can get a district attorney elected in certain areas around this country for like less than $5,000 very easily. I think I piss a lot of people off because I'm like LP should focus a lot of effort on sheriffs and district attorneys, because if they won't arrest the person and they won't prosecute the person, there is no crime.
Right.
It's a good way to stop all this, this drug policy running rampant all over the planet or country, whatever. I don't know what your overall plan for that is, because I know some pretty high profile people are already talking about possibly making a bid for the president in 2024. I don't want to talk about that, but I do want to talk about your thinking as far as how we should best expend our resources, limited as they are, to get people elected, like actually elected.
I think the National Party, well, as it's situated right now, it does not have the funding to fund every local race that it wants to fund. There is a mechanism for people to apply to get funding from the National Party. And I think that that's underutilized because people aren't aware of it. It's certainly underfunded. But aside
that's bad
from
marketing.
Right. So we need to fund that better. We need to get more we need to get more volunteers. We need to get more donors at the national level, and then help facilitate, small and mid-sized donors being able to donate to meaningful campaigns. The National Party can work sort of like a lever for that.
Right.
Even if they don't have the funding to do it all, we can elevate these races in our messaging. We can work to disseminate that message through other state parties, through, media personalities and talking heads that the National Party has historically been unfriendly to, but people who are excellent advocates for liberty. How about that? Maintain a better relationship with people, and then they're going to be more inclined to help your local candidates. That would be a great start. We have some people at the national level who do really good trainings, and I believe their trainings are underutilized because people have so little faith in the National Party, and they kind of hold it in contempt. A lot of state and county affiliates don't have a good relationship. So I think repairing that would probably help to bring some of those resources that are good down to the candidates and local races that need them. Because when you're running on a shoestring budget, like you said, there are some races that can be won for $5,000. We can find $5,000 within the country, even if it's not within the LNC budget. But we need to spend those $5,000 carefully and very meaningfully, and we need to have the best strategy. I think that the National Party can offer that if they'll just get their act together.
Right.
Once we get that down, once we get that going, then you may see people start to donate more to national, and you may see our budget for candidates increase. That's what I'd really like to see. Apollo Pazel, who runs the Frontier Project, he does a great job. I know that he could get more people elected, especially in areas like Idaho, maybe rural California, Wyoming, that part of the country, Montana.
Wyoming, Montana, northern Nevada, possibly.
Yep.
Northern Utah.
Yes, but he needs the funding to do it. And he needs the LNC to be supportive of him when he has to work with candidates in areas that are more socially conservative. Doesn't mean they're not libertarian. It just means that they can't put, sex work and LGBT and all of the stuff that works fine for LA or, metropolitan areas. It means they can't plaster it all over the front of their campaign.
No, that would just make sure they lose.
Right. So we have to just.
The idea is to represent the people, and then you can explain to your constituents why you're in favor of something or against something or whatever. Right. But you're not going to get that opportunity if you just throw it in their face and they go, "Well, I'm not on board for that."
Right. I mean, Ron Paul didn't plaster that stuff all over his campaign, but for crying out loud, he got up on national television and said that he'd decriminalize heroin. So there's a way to do it.
And they cheered. They cheered in South Carolina.
Yeah, and it was just laughed off as a joke. Of course we wouldn't shoot up heroin. So there's a way to do it, right? And we need to let candidates and people who are experts with that control their messaging. And national needs to be supportive of that, and they need to help facilitate it. Right now, I feel like they're a little hostile. Maybe just not over the top. Well,
it doesn't help when the LP National throws, say, Kentucky under the bus.
Right.
That just turns states against you, and it's not good. You can't be doing that.
What does it say when you can't speak out against an entire nation being basically on house arrest,
imprisoned?
Yeah, for a whole year, you're on house arrest. You can't say anything about that, but you don't like a state party's tweet, and you're going to throw them under the bus immediately.
Yeah,
that tells me that you don't support your own organization. That's really gross.
Right.
Your principles.
I personally didn't have any argument with. I didn't care. To me, I was like. Right. I get the point they're trying to make. It's a strong point. But no matter what you say, you're going to piss somebody off. So just ignore that part. But the fact that they got attacked the way they did, and then that, an LP National had an opportunity here to keep the message on the COVID passports. They didn't. They missed it again. One of the things I've talked to a lot of people on this channel and on their channels at this point, and I have quite a budget for donating to LP, rather they're running for school board or whatever. I currently, other than dues, refuse to give any money to LP National until there's changes at the top. And I've had people say, well, but we still, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm not going to give it to them with the current makeup, the way that it is. I think it's imperative that we get you up there as chair, and we get just better leadership up there, because then people like myself will say, okay, I can afford, maybe $40,000-$50,000 a year to help these guys out, but I'm not going to give it to these guys. I just can't. I refuse to do it. That's money that I can spend to help people running for city council, school board, things like that. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, there's really stupid rules about how much you can give to each person and all that nonsense, but that's the duopoly playing their dumb little games in most cases.
Yeah, we do need better people elected to the national committee, to members at large and region reps. And we do have some really good people on, Joshua Smith and Karen Ann Harlos and Aaron Adams are, they're vocally opposed to lockdowns, and they're open to about how they vote, and they're transparent. So another problem that we have on the LNC is there's all this shady behind the scenes backdoor. No one wants to just say what they're about, which is, it's a huge problem for the culture. You need leaders who are just open and honest about what they're thinking, why they're voting a certain way, what they're feeling, what their reasoning is. There's no reason. Here's one thing that really, really nauseates me. Is when you're in an executive committee meeting and a motion comes up and you need to vote on it, and it's about taking a stand on something, whether or not we're going to have an in-person convention, or if we're going to have an in-person meeting with the backdrop of coronavirus, making it too dangerous, or right, something along those lines. And the vote comes up. And what happens? People, it comes to their turn, they go around the room and they say, pass.
Right.
Because they don't want to be the first one to say yes or no or take a stand. That bothers me to no end, that you are too.
It's cowardice.
Yeah.
It's cowardice. I saw there was, I don't know if you saw it, but a few back in February or whatever, when they were going to vote for Speaker of the House.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy Dore, who's very progressive, and I disagree with him on almost every single issue, but the man is no coward by any means,
right,
started screaming like crazy at these so-called progressives that they need to force a vote on, what was it, minimum wage or healthcare for all is what it was, Medicare for all. And they wouldn't do it. And it's hilarious to me because I'm like, he knew it wouldn't pass. That's not what he wanted. He wanted you to have to put a yes or a no on it. So they knew who to go after.
Right. Thomas Massey's pretty good about that too. He's like,
Thomas Massey's very good about that. I liked that first stimulus nightmare bill when he was like, no, you have to actually come and vote. And, it turned out against him or whatever. But I'm with you. People, if you're going to be a leader, lead. Otherwise, step aside and allow someone to take your spot.
When there's a controversy, there should be a roll call vote so that you know how the people you elected are voting. I think that's really important. I do it in LA County. We don't really have contentious votes in LA County. We don't have drama. And for those of you who don't know, I chair the Los Angeles Libertarian Party, and it's very large. We have over 240 members who are dues paying on average every month. It's larger than most state affiliates.
That's pretty good. That's like larger than the state of Utah.
Yes.
I think.
Yes. So. And that's not counting lapsed members and people who still participate, but, don't keep up on their membership, or non-voting anarchists. We have a lot of them as well who are just come to our social events and help us out in other ways.
Right.
But during board meetings, everybody votes. If there's anything, if it's about money, people say their name, you vote. If it's a principled thing where we really want the record to reflect how we care about something, like when we drafted a resolution to support Nick Wildstar not going to prison for disrupting the courtroom for being noisy. I take everyone's name. We do a roll call vote. It only takes an extra minute or two.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and it's a really good exercise for our leaders to be reminded of what they're doing and why they're there.
Yeah,
that's what
I agree with that. I think that's the biggest problem right now is, I know a lot of people aren't dues paying members, or they may be to their state but not to national or whatever. And I understand the national thing completely. I do think that it's very important to start getting people to actually pay their dues. But that, again, like you said, the LP National with such bad messaging, that reflects even to the people in Ohio or Idaho or whatever. They go, well, I don't want to give these people money. And they don't know how the dues are being allotted in a lot of cases, and so I would imagine a lot of them are thinking, okay, well, how much of this money that I give to my state then goes to LP National, who I don't want to give money to?
Yeah, it can really hurt the state parties. There's a push right now at the national level to blend state party and national party membership, which is interesting. I haven't taken
I don't like it.
Yeah, I haven't taken a strong stand on it. You have an option to opt out of either or, depending on what you think. But I feel like if we're going to go there, if we're going to do that, national better be really good. We better be really on point.
Yes. I guess I don't like it because anytime I hear something like, oh, we're going to blend state and national, I think, ew, decentralization.
Yeah.
I can see where it could be very useful, but I don't know. It maybe if we can change leadership at national, I'd probably reevaluate it. As it stands now, I'd be very much against it.
Yeah, we had a vote on it in California at the California Executive Committee level, and I abstained, which I thought was a prudent, reasonable choice considering my position. I wasn't trying to push either or, and I was just like, I'm not sold on this yet. I don't hate progress. I'm not trying to like kneecap the party, but I don't feel like compelled to support this yet. So,
right. I find that very interesting. And I'm glad you brought that up. I want to unpack that a little so that people understand abstaining is not a coward's move. If you don't have a feeling, if you don't know your answer on something and the vote is now happening now, you shouldn't vote. You should abstain. You absolutely should. I felt
that it was, I didn't have enough information to make a really good vote. And I looked into it, I was given advance notice, and if you feel conflicted, you shouldn't just throw your vote in with the majority, right?
Right. I agree with that. That's one of the things, and I don't know that people understand this, but they say, well, whatever bill passed down party lines, at a national level, in fact, a lot of states, not in California where you live because there's only one party. They got one party rule. So, but that to me is much worse than someone abstaining. Because Tulsi Gabbard was very good about abstaining to things if she didn't support or not support. She wouldn't just vote the way the party told her to. I liked that about her. There was a lot I didn't like about her. I did donate money to her, but that was because I liked that she was wiping out like Kamala and stuff, and I thought it was funny, and I wanted to keep her in there.
I gave her $1 to stay in the debates. You get $1. You get $1.
You get $1. I also gave money to Joe Jorgensen's campaign. So, I mean, I didn't give any to Trump or any of the other people running, but, and I would have probably donated to Justin Amash, but I really didn't think he was going to stay in it for anything,
Nah.
So, but, that's a discussion of a different time. As far as the messaging goes, I like what the Mises Caucus has been doing. I wanted to ask you about this. One of the things that I know that LP National was doing was you could get essentially like a kickback for bringing in dues-paying members. And I know it got canceled. And they said, well, it was too expensive. And I'm like, well, that is retarded. It can't be too expensive. It's free. You get someone out there and they get people to sign up and you give them $1 or whatever it is. You know what I mean? How is that too expensive? Especially when you have a newsletter.
It's because, so apparently whoever was running this affiliate program put in a bunch of manpower to go after membership renewals of people who joined through affiliate links, which is not the appropriate way to run an affiliate program.
Right.
This should be an automated reminder for a renewal. Exactly. And if they can't figure that out, okay, you need someone who actually can run a successful program. This is like a staffing issue. You could call it a training issue if you want, but this comes down to people not knowing how to do their jobs, people who have been hired incorrectly, or they've been given bad policies and procedures. I mean, This is like an automated click thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can write a very short program that you could learn how to do on YouTube.
Yeah.
To where it would just send out an automatic notification. Hey, dues are coming up, or you're a little behind. Whatever.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the argument would be, oh, but that's not how membership renewal works. Every membership renewal is treated equally. Everyone gets the same amount of junk mail. That's not a good argument. That's not a good way to run an organization.
How's that been working out for you?
It's not. We don't have, the most amazing, compelling membership. So.
Yeah, well, and the other side of it is you don't want to look like a bunch of boomers that don't know what you're doing.
We really don't.
I recently just hosted 7 guys that are going across country in a covered wagon, and it's for veterans, that got PTSD and they've been harmed from war, and so they're doing this thing, and they're literally pulling a covered wagon, and they're on horseback, and they're going across country. They do it every year, 4 weeks a year. It's actually a really cool program. They train service animals to give to these guys or whatever that are the worst of the worst, and they're highly affected. But we had like the horse trainer, because he had an equine thing that helps these guys out. A dog trainer out of Arizona, the wrangler out of Missouri, the guy that runs the joint out of Missouri. My older brother's a member of this group. He's out of Kansas. So it's a huge bunch of these guys, right? And I converted a couple of them to Libertarian. I was like, well, do you believe this? Yeah. Okay, you believe this? Yeah. What do you think about, the war on drugs? Well, that's ridiculous, especially for these guys, because a lot of them have used marijuana for their anxiety and stuff, right? And I'm like, congratulations, you're not a Republican. That's not real.
Right.
But they're all extremely anti-war. One of the things I desperately miss is the LP National being just avidly anti-war. It was something that was constant, and they don't seem to be. I mean, they are, sure, they'll complain about it, but not to the level that I think they should be still. I think that should still be our number one thing. That and lockdowns and more.
I agree.
Right?
There's so much powerful messaging that you can do with the anti-war message. And I feel like veterans are this sort of, you could even call them a special interest group that are forgotten, cast aside. And if we were to radicalize them and give them support so that they felt supported and heard, we would probably have a pretty powerful voting bloc. We definitely have a good activist bloc. And you get a lot of really intense emotional arguments and emotional appeal when you interview veterans and you tell their stories. Right.
Well, it's something that everyone has to look at and go, we caused this.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people will say, I mean, even other than that, they'll say, well, I'm not the one that voted to send them to war. You voted for the person that voted to send them to war. You caused this. And then what do? They go, oh, it was a mistake. Well, I'll vote for you again. No, that's an unforgivable mistake, in my opinion. That person needs replaced earlier than, the earlier the better, in my opinion. So in that regard, most of Congress and the Senate would be different if I had my way, but
yeah,
they would be anyway.
Boy, if we could actually vote people out on their record, that would be
that would
phenomenal.
That'd be crazy. But people, I always hear, well, Congress has an 8% approval rating, and I'm like, yeah, but an individual congressperson in their district has a very high approval rating.
Right.
There's a problem with that. You know what I mean? And the LP should be blasting that against the wall. Like, well, look at this congressperson's a piece of trash, and this is what they did, this is what they voted for, yada, yada, yada. This is how it damaged you.
They show up to a couple of town hall meetings in their city or their district a couple times a year with free hot dogs or whatever. Now it's, I don't know, free face masks and shots. and that's it. And they call it a day. There's no real accountability. If we were able to have state or county affiliates really dig in and throw up some dirt on these the worst of the worst, we would help to get them out. But we're afraid to do that because we so desperately want to be liked, even by people who hold us in contempt and think that we're terrorists.
I would just say this. Trump wanted to be liked, but he also was able to, or willing to, piss people off.
Right.
Willing to get down in the mud, literally. I mean, he was. I really miss him on Twitter, watching him just get everyone all crazy. Plus, Michael Malice had way better material to work with then, and so I feel like.
Yeah, I agree.
It was a detriment to society when they threw him off Twitter, in my opinion. But he was willing to get down in the mud. And I think the libertarians, I mean, I respect that they want to be seen as comforting and we're here and whatever. But sometimes you got to get down in the mud.
Yeah.
You got to, go to war. I mean, because this is how I see what's going on in our country right now. We are literally in a war and we're losing it. We are losing it. We're losing it bad, and it's very rapid. It's only getting worse. It's not getting better. All these people thought, well, we'll get old and cheap in there and it'll get better. It got worse, which that's sad that, now I have to be like, damn it, Trump was better than Biden. Like,
we're so afraid. We're so afraid of being disliked that we don't want to actually speak the truth. So it's like, before we even like sling mud at anyone, we have to get to the point where we're comfortable just telling the truth. Even we can't even tell the truth in a nice tone. That's where we're at with messaging. It's like, we would rather just, throw something else up on the news than talk about what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Not a good place to be.
I want to throw out a shout out to Jeremy Todd, David Fite, and Reed Coverdell, because those three guys, they may not have the platform Dave Smith has or whatever. They changed the game. They changed the argument. And they're the only reason that I'm like re-engaged. Yeah. I mean, honestly, they went out there, they said, look, and they have a perfectly reasonable message. We're not going to agree on everything. Let's pick a few things that we absolutely agree on and let's go for it. And they kind of calmed things down, in my opinion, with the name calling. I mean, it still happens, obviously. In fact, I just saw you were under siege on Twitter a little while ago, but I'm like, she's used to that, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, it's just,
it's not just you, it's the Mises caucus is always under siege.
Yeah.
But I like what those guys are doing, and I think it's working. So I'm seeing an opportunity to get you in leadership up there. That's what you were under siege because you had said that you needed to get to $2,000 a month on your Patreon. Seemed perfectly reasonable to me, which I'll be subscribing to your Patreon.
Thank you.
But I didn't understand them attacking you for it. I was like, well, then she can put all of her time and effort into the job and not have to try to have another job. It makes sense to me.
It should. But in the LP, this is an incredibly toxic part of libertarian culture. We hate on anyone who gets paid for work.
That seems odd to me.
It's not very libertarian.
One of the things Biden said, though, is you shouldn't have to work, or you shouldn't have to have a job to get a paycheck. He said that. And I was like,
it's just another LP. Yep. It's just further evidence that the Libertarian Party is chasing the culture of the left instead of reflecting their own culture. Now we've got envy and hatred for people who are successful or who get paid even a very low salary for doing important, meaningful work, because $2,000 a month is not what I make doing litigation. But I can live off of it because I have a very supportive boyfriend and I have low cost of living, and a lot of my health stuff now is like under control, so I don't have crazy medical bills. Like, I can manage that. And so I'm willing to do that. So, most people who are rational and appreciative are like applauding that and saying, that's great, let's help you get to that goal. But, Nick Sarwark and a handful of his haters were, ridiculing me or making fun of me or, well, congratulations, Nick. I saw you have one supporter now on your newly formed Patreon. I I've probably said more about him than I should. I don't understand.
I wasn't going to name any of the people because I don't like to give them, like to give them a shout out, even if usually I'm criticizing them. But Nick's easy to criticize. But
here's another toxic element of Libertarian Party culture is, instead of going out and like fighting for freedom and spending your time in a meaningful way, you want to sit on the internet and attack libertarians on Twitter or Facebook for hours on end. Why, who has time for that? Or I can't understand why you think that's a good way to spend your time.
I don't
People do
understand
it.
why they're not taking that that activism that they obviously have and going out and spreading message in their community. You know,
Right.
I had Rex Lawhorn on the show, and we discussed Dave Smith's tactics and language that he was using. That you know, the Mises Party's just going to take it over. He said, well, he basically said what you just said. He said sitting on the on social media and complaining about it doesn't change it. If you want to make sure that doesn't happen, you better get out there and recruit people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I don't understand where it's just, oh, well, I'm just going to sit here and complain. It's like, well, do something about it. Like, complaining, not going to work. That's not getting you anywhere.
Yeah. Could you imagine if we funneled all of the complaining into like anti-government activism? We would be in a very different place. Very different place in this world.
Well, there's a lot of people on both sides of the duopoly that are extremely upset with what's going on.
Yes.
Even with their own parties. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen a massive number of people leave the Republican and Democratic Party in the last just few months. They're just like, they're out. You know, you've got people like Bridget Fedesi or Tim Pool who are like, well, I can't be a libertarian because all they do is fight.
Yep.
But
Just
these are big name people that if you get the right message and you change the game, you might get these people.
Oh,
and
I think so.
Very influential, you know.
I think so. I think that we're on the up and up. Aside from all of the problems with LP National, I think that we've got an excellent activist base right now, and we've got a lot of passionate people who really care. We do have a few really good outspoken voices at the top and some more rising stars. We're also getting people from the left. Stacey Ann on Twitter has got a really good podcast now, and she, I believe, is from the left. And so, you know, like, we're getting some courageous voices right now, people who are really like fed up and their eyes have been opened. So I'm optimistic for our future.
I am too. I think things are actually looking up quite a bit. I think if you're sitting at the top, LP National, you should be wary that changes are afoot, whether you like it or not. I know they'll probably try to pull some shenanigans, but you know, we'll just have to make sure we don't let them do that.
Correct.
So we are coming up on an hour. We've got just a few minutes left. I know you've got to get back to work. So why don't you throw it out there? What do you got going on? Where can people go and support you? I didn't have your Patreon channel, so I didn't put it in the description, but I will add it in the description for the video.
Awesome. And there is a link to my Patreon from my website. That's AngelaMcArdle.com. I will be attending lots of conventions over the next 2.5 months, and I'm looking forward to seeing as many people in person as I possibly can. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of the things. I'm on the stuff, and I'm pretty accessible. So if you have questions about the National Party race, if you want to get involved, especially in California or LA County, please contact me and I'll get you connected.
Right on, right on. And were you going to be at Freedom Fest?
Yes.
That's the big thing. Everyone's always like, oh, are you going to Freedom Fest? And I can't make it this year, so I'm going to sponsor Magnus Panvidia to go.
Awesome.
I think that'll be cool. So right on. Angela, I really appreciate this. We'll have to do it again when things start getting closer and the fight heats up. Everyone go and support her. She deserves it. Hit up her Patreon. That way we can get her into a full-time job at LP National. Thank you, Angela.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.